I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly, and we are back with another video. If you are new to the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are into true crime stories and news and politics, we get into it all, and I think you would enjoy it, and I would greatly appreciate you joining me here on my channel. If you are not new, returning listener, or subscriber, thank you as always for being a friend, and please interact with the video. Like it if you like it, give me a comment. It really does help my channel out, and I thank you so much for everything that you guys do and for just listening to the video in general. So I wanted to jump on here, guys. This will be a pretty quick video. I haven't done a video about the Idaho 4 murders and what is going on with that whole situation in a while. You know, there hasn't really been a ton that has been new. Things have kind of been building slowly in this case, but I have been paying attention and noticing what has been going on, and I wanted to jump on here and talk to you guys about it and get your all's thoughts on the case proceedings and what is going on with the defense of BRYAN KOHBERGER, who I will try to limit my use of his name as we don't know whether or not he is the killer or not, but it seems that there are some doubts now in a lot of people's minds. So we're going to delve into it a little bit here, and it's mainly just for discussion. I want to know, you know, what you guys' thoughts are and get some more discourse on it, and just kind of, you know, hash this out and see where this is going to be heading. It seems like there might be some missteps that have happened along the way with the prosecutors, and it's just looking a little bit like a hot mess of a case. So we're going to get into it, guys. I do want to, however, start off because if you've been following my channel throughout me posting updates about this case, and I will link the playlist within this video so you guys can check that out if you want to get updated, if you haven't been following this, if you're curious and want to just hear, you know, my full you know, take. There's going to be a playlist linked, and from the beginning I have been having my doubts about this whole thing. And what I mean by that is from the initial arrest of BRYAN KOHBERGER, something didn't sit right with me. So I want to just revisit one of my videos that I made, and I do apologize in advance for the sound quality. Obviously I've made some improvements on my channel here, but I wanted to just kind of revisit some of my thoughts on this, just to refresh my own memory. I've been feeling this way for a while, and I still am not convinced, and I think that this is where the problem lies in the prosecution's entire case, is that they have kind of slopped this up. They have kind of just not done due diligence. You know, and again, I still don't know everything that they have. I still don't know what it is that they're going to eventually lay out ultimately, but from an outsider's perspective who's just completely non-relevant and totally, you know, an onlooker's perspective. Okay, so let's just play this.
Apparently they have arrested a suspect, okay? And let's get into it, guys. Let's talk about it. I have questions still, okay? So, and y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments at the end of the video, throughout the video, whenever. If you have any thoughts, let me know down there. Okay, guys, so as soon as I saw the news of this, and I, like, read...
Do y'all ever, like, listen to your voice back?
Read about it, and, like, I don't know, it's something... And I'm not saying that the police are wrong, because obviously they know a lot more than I do. And I just want to say also that this is all speculation. This whole video, guys, let me, you know, just put it out there. This is all my opinion. This is all speculation. and it's all alleged, okay?
And if you guys don't remember, I'll basically sum this up for you. The press conference was totally just no new information. They just came on here to basically pat themselves on the back for finally catching a person. And, you know, to me, this gave off the energy of, we don't care who it was. We just got somebody, so you guys can shut the fuck up. Because people were really putting the pressure on to this, you know, the sheriff's office and the prosecutor and the whole state of Idaho, saying, what the hell's going on over there? This is a quadruple murder of 4 young, beautiful college students, and you guys can't figure it out? Like a bloody murder, too, like a stabbing, you know, quadruple homicide. I mean, you would think it would be somewhat of a slam dunk, if you will, in order to kind of locate a suspect and get the person in custody, but it just didn't turn out to be that. So to me, the press conference was more just like, yeah, we got him. So can you guys please get off our backs and shut up now? So that's all this was.
If there's no connection, then I just highly, highly doubt the probability of him driving 15 minutes from his house to pick a random house, which this was a campus student living, you know, a very busy part of the campus. You know, as we saw on previous videos, people were all around walking, out drinking. There was frat houses all over, you know, people were in fraternity sororities all over that area and all in those houses and apartments. So I just find it almost impossible to believe that he would have done this completely at random, and he had no previous interactions or links to any of these people in this house. And I just cannot, I choose not to believe that. I won't believe it. So, okay guys, now let's get into the...
Ooh, now do you choose not to believe it, girl? Those are definitive words. So that, I just wanted to remind myself kind of what my thinking was, and it's just basically the same thing that it is now. There's... It's on shaky grounds, and especially considering the articles that we're fixing to go over now. You know, like I said, we all had theories before this person was arrested. You know, I was certain that it had to have been someone that they knew, because if you look at crime patterns and crime statistics and just things of this nature, and you look at this man's previous arrest record, they cannot link him to any other previous murders. It just doesn't make sense why a stranger, if they cannot prove that he was linked to any of these people in this house, you know, directly, why, what is the purpose, what is the motive, and how do you get away with something like this? It's just hard to digest, and I think that is going to be the thorn in the prosecutor's side in convicting this man in a quadruple homicide, probably one of the most infamous and horrific crimes that the state of Idaho has seen to date. So I wanted to, before we get into the articles, I want to go over this video that Megyn Kelly had on her show from the other day. She does this panel of lawyers and gives updates on true crime stories that she's following on her show. And so it was Mark Garagos and Marsha Clark. And let's get into this because it's interesting, because we have a prosecutor and a defense attorney, both extremely famous and capable in their fields. So I value whenever they come on here and speak about these particular cases, and I find it interesting to hear what they have to say. So let's get into this video here, and then we will read a few quick articles and hop out.
All right, so speaking of the evidence, now we have learned that we knew before that the prosecution had used something called genetic genealogy to figure out where did this DNA found on the knife sheath that had been left by the murderer at the murder scene, where did it come from? They were told that they had done a regular search in the FBI's database, you know, does this match a perp who we have in the system? And it did not. So they went to genetic genealogy, where you can use public databases, and in this case, private databases as well, of not private to you and me, but in other words, a special database that they went to try to figure out whether it has, thank you, non-governmental. To figure out whether this DNA we have matches anybody whose DNA is publicly available, and that's how they zeroed in on KOHBERGER. It wasn't his, but they said we can definitely link it to the dad who lives in the Poconos, someone related to that dad. And then the circles got more concentric around the son, BRYAN, who was 10 miles away from the murder scene. Marsha, we now know that they retested the son himself, Bryan Kohberger. They took a cheek swab, and they are now saying it showed a direct match, Bryan Kohberger's DNA on that knife sheath. So we're going to get into how a lot of the other evidence is circumstantial. That's not circumstantial.
Well, it is, actually. Isn't it funny?
Is?
People have this notion that circumstantial means something much more removed, but circumstantial evidence is a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is DNA. I used to tell the juries all the time, I would say, this is largely a circumstantial evidence case. And then they'd say, well, you're out. Never mind. I'm not interested. I said, well, how about the fact that there's a fingerprint and the victim's on the victim's shoulder? And, well, but that's not circumstantial. Oh, it is. It is. So's DNA. Huh. Same thing. The limitation of circumstantial evidence is, and with DNA, for example, or a fingerprint, is you can't tell when it was deposited. So, for example, you have this amazing result of DNA, 1 in 5 octillion chance of that it is him as opposed to a randomly selected person, unrelated. So, that is a match. But you don't know when that DNA got on there. And you don't know how that knife sheath got on there. So it leaves room for the defense to say someone else dropped the knife sheath. Of course, it was mine at one time. I had my fingerprints on it. I had my DNA on it from months ago. So in that sense, it is circumstantial, but it is very damning. I mean, what is your knife sheath doing under the body of one of the victims when you have no known natural or...
But can they prove that it was his knife sheath? I don't know if that has been established or verified yet. And if it was his, how long ago did he purchase it? Had he gotten rid of it at any point? Had he lost it at any point? These are all questions that are going to be considered or may potentially come up within the trial. So people might hold this up as like the biggest piece of evidence. And right now, it's really all they've got, if we're being honest. But this to me is shaky. And, yes, it's a thing. It is a thing that we can consider. But what else? There's got to be something else in the horrific stabbing, bloody murders of 4 individuals. And if you're telling me that there's nothing else, huge red flags and sirens are going off in my brain. And that's just the fact of the matter. And the genetic genealogy, matching people to crimes, I don't know how I feel about it. I think that it can be accurate, but I think that police are now relying a little too heavily on that method, whereas, it should be something that should be used in like the last case scenario. This was like one of the first things that they did. I mean, they did this before they even had really, I think, their main suspect, who was this person, in their focus. They might have maybe looked at him before, but I think like it wasn't for sure in their minds, and this is kind of how they used it to confirm or a suspicion or confirm a potential suspect. And that is where I feel like it's muddy, and I feel like you're getting into very, I don't know, I would even dare to say unconstitutional territories. I don't know if this has gone up to the Supreme Court or how this is being looked at within case law, but it makes me uncomfortable to be used in this way. And especially if there's nothing else, evidence-wise, that is directly a link to this suspect.
Unculpable reason for being there. They didn't know each other. They didn't party together. So just the fact the knife sheath was there, and then of course the DNA on it, you put it all together, but it's all circumstantial.
Well, let me ask you a question, because that's interesting. If his bloody fingerprint were found at the scene, or if DNA from the victims were found in his car, would that also be circumstantial?
Yes. Same thing. You can't say when it got put there. No one saw it get put there. Direct evidence is me seeing, if you go and shoot somebody and I watch you do it, that is direct evidence. But of course, I would argue that whoever you shot deserved it. So that's a whole other issue. But right. If I don't see it, if you're coming up with evidence that is deposited at some point in time that is not observed by anyone, even a bloody fingerprint, though, of course, a bloody fingerprint gets a lot closer to something you could call like direct evidence, it's still circumstantial.
That's interesting. Well, I didn't know that. I never practiced criminal law, so that's interesting to me.
All right, so Mark, to follow up
Yeah, go
on
ahead.
that, it's interesting because with the Innocence Project, most of the evidence against people who were condemned and sent to death row was as a result of direct evidence, and they were exculpated by the circumstantial evidence of DNA, which is that's one of the things I talk to jurors about in voir dire, to point out the differences of what we always think. It turns out that many of the studies show that direct evidence, eyewitness identification, is much more fallible than circumstantial evidence.
Well, the genetic genealogy link that started it off before they got the actual cheek swab from the defendant and they were looking more at who in the universe could this DNA on this knife sheath belong to is becoming an issue in the case, Mark. The defense lawyer is asking the court to compel prosecution.
Just to make another point on that, you know, this is also a huge flaw in our justice system because, as we've discussed on this channel before, we live amongst idiots in this country. The majority of the country is low IQ. They are not plugged into, you know, knowledgeable aspects of society, criminal law, or anything of which these three people and, you know, we are talking about here on my show. They just aren't. They just aren't. They live in bubbles. They don't have the capacity to think on broad, abstract ideas, and that's just the fact of the matter. And these are the people who are deciding these cases. So a lot of people aren't going to understand that circumstantial evidence, meaning what they were just discussing, you know, bloody fingerprint, you know, possible DNA, all of this stuff that they're just listing as circumstantial. They're not going to understand that that is usually more compelling than a flawed human perspective. Who there have been women who have been raped, who have pointed out the completely wrong person who, you know, did this very graphic sexual assault on them. So humans are flawed, you know, like we have, you know, memory issues, we have traumatic blocks that appear in our, you know, there's all kinds of different things that go on. So people think, you know, they watch crime shows and they hear direct evidence, circumstantial evidence. They might have some, you know, minor idea of what it is that means, but they don't fully understand. And some people aren't even capable of understanding the broader aspects of those specific aspects of criminal law and how that should be interpreted when deciding the fate of a suspected killer who might potentially be sent to death row. And that's scary, you know, when you really think about it. I've been saying that I feel like our whole jury system and that whole deal needs to really be, I don't know, needs to be reevaluated. Like, how are we picking people? Like, they say jury of your peers, but like, is it really? I mean, and now that social media has become such a huge aspect of everyone's life, and these cases are just plastered all over everywhere, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying we should upend our criminal justice system, but there's definitely some things that need overhaul, I think, and things that should be, I don't know, reevaluated. And I'm not the person to do that. You know, like, I feel like that should be like, you know, lawyers deciding, people, you know, much more invested in the process and educated in the process than I am. But it's an idea for sure, because that is a terrifying thought.
To turn over additional discovery materials and info on the genetic genealogy techniques investigators used before labeling KOHBERGER their suspect. They're also asking for information on why the FBI expanded the range of model years on a white Hyundai Elantra they were looking for in connection with the case. Now, those two items that they want discovery on might have nothing to do with each other, but they might have something to do with one another in that initially the police said they were looking for a Hyundai Elantra of certain years that would not have included BRYAN KOHBERGER's, and then they expanded the years to a year, his was 2015, that would have been included. And there's been some questions raised about whether that expansion happened after they got the hit on KOHBERGER's dad and started to zero. So what's the defense attorney doing here? What's he trying to set up?
This is a brilliant strategy by the defense, and I'll tell you why. You've hit exactly on what they think. They're creating a timeline to show that the expansion of the Elantra after the FBI had given an opinion that would have excluded Kohlberger, and then we talked about this. They then went back to them once they had Kohlberger, and they expanded the number of years to include his car. But this is also a very subtle kind of a gray mail, because that is a technique in classified documents cases where you say, okay, we're going to go forward. I'm not going to get a classification. You've got to show me the classified documents publicly, and then the prosecutor backs down. We know that the FBI and investigative agencies do not want to reveal how they use or how they get to this genetic testing that then takes them to one of the relatives.
Of course
so
they
they're
don't.
saying on one hand, show us that, hoping that they say we're not going to do that. If they turn out and they say, okay, we're going to turn that process, that investigative technique over, but it's under a protective order, that's fine, because then what you're going to do as the defense, you're going to take the two unidentified males that are at that were found at the scene, the DNA, and you're going to use the same testing protocol and see who you come up with in the databases based on their very own protocol. And God forbid that you hit somebody who is a potential other suspect, because then you're going to ask all kinds of questions about why their DNA was there, or that universe of alternative suspects, third-party liability.
That is, dude, like literally mic drop moment. Like what he just laid out is, if they did this, if it actually came to this, I mean, this could break the entire case completely apart. Because, I mean, this is why I said that this case is so sloppy, and they did such, it seems to me, a poor job. Not knowing fully yet all the details, it seems like they just really, I don't know. They, like Barney Fife and the Three Stooges up there running the damn show. Because why were these two other male DNA never revealed to the public on a larger scale? You know, maybe, like, I feel like in the beginning, and whenever they first found this person, they were trying to, like, pump up their case. We all know how the media works now. If you watch this channel, you guys, you know, we talked about this, like, the propaganda, the way that the media will run with a narrative. And things will come up, like a nugget of information will pop up, and then it seems like this big bombshell, and then it's never followed up with ever again. Like, it just poof disappears in the atmosphere because it's a lead that goes nowhere. So people put it out into the world. It taints certain people's minds to think a certain thing. And then when there's no follow-up saying, oh, well, we got this wrong, this actually never was an accurate lead, this was never actual accurate evidence, then people just continue thinking the original thing that was put out there. So the fact that, like, the prosecutors didn't maybe possibly do any due diligence when it comes to the other two male DNA, and maybe they did, maybe they were able to, like, do that, analyze that other DNA, and, you know, they felt like that those were not, you know, very, like, those were not probable leads for them to follow. But if this does go to trial, and what Mark Geragos just laid out does occur, and their process of analyzing the DNA found at the scene, let's say it turns up, like, you know, one of the Jacks, like Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. Let's say it turns up the driver that drove home Maddie and Kaylee. Let's say it turns up the food truck guy. You know, like, all these people who were in the mix in the beginning of the case that people were really pointing fingers at or looking at out of the corner of their eyes. And that DNA ends up being linked to any of those people. The defense is going to use that like a dog with a bone in the trial to completely obliterate the state's case and just totally drive a hole through their reasonable doubt wall that they have to get over. You know, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the suspect that you're trying did the crime that you are alleging. And the defense attorney gets a hold of something like this, piece of evidence like that, and it could mean nothing. It could just be like that, you know, obviously Jack was Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. His DNA is going to be probably found on the scene. We know this. But it doesn't look good it doesn't look good because the state is going to then have to lay out how it is exactly that they were able to exonerate him fully and prove that he was in no way involved. They're going to have to back all of that up, and it's going to drive a huge wedge of doubt in the minds of the jury, in my opinion.
Ability.
Junk.
So, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments about that segment. I found that discussion to be fascinating, and especially what Mark said there at the end. So let's get into a few of these articles. I'm just gonna kind of run through these. This is from 6 months ago, but this was the first thing. Okay, I just wanted to read this. This is like another Reddit rabbit hole. We're not gonna spend too much time on this, but people have been saying on Reddit for months and since the beginning that they think this person is innocent. Let's not forget Bryan has admirers. Brittany Highsloppy, yeah, we remember you, girl. That are saying they don't even care. Like they want him to come and stab them and rape and murder them. People are weird, but this has been swirling on Reddit for a long time. So I thought this was interesting, a little tidbit or a theory that was put onto this thread. It said, we learned from old friends that BK had a history of anxiety and using drugs. A more plausible explanation is that BK was buying drugs from a fraternity group via DM, who is Dylan, from the one of the surviving roommates. On the night of the 13th of November, which was the night of the crime, he noticed something odd occurring within the residence and either fled rapidly. Video capture at the time of 4:20 a.m. and he entered the residence to help, which I don't fully understand why anyone would do that. And they're going to have to prove a link, which I think would be fairly easy. And from what I understand, that still hasn't happened yet. So this is kind of, feeding into the theory that he might have entered, and the line that was in the affidavit basically saying that somebody said, "I'm going to help you," was actually Bryan. I don't know if I buy that. I think she misheard. I think that girl was high that night. I don't even know what her deal was that night, but something fishy is going on there. I definitely do believe that drugs had something to do, not maybe directly with the crime, but with that house for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. There was some funny business going on in that house, and I don't know if that's what led to the murders necessarily, but I think that there was opportunity for someone, So, and then this person said, my own theory is that the knife belonged to Ethan. It was a camping knife. He may have showed it to Bryan and transferred skin cell DNA onto it at a party. And again, this will have to be proven in court as, that they were linked somehow. And it is my understanding that there's no link that they have found yet between Bryan Kohberger and any of these housemates. So this is another tall order, but again, I think it is very plausible that, if they can't prove that, via receipts or transactional history that Bryan ever purchased this knife, it's possible that he might have gone to a store, picked it up, and looked at it. Maybe that's the thing. His DNA could have been sitting there for, God knows however long that kind of thing lasts. It's possible that he came into contact with it at some point. Maybe it did belong to him and then he got rid of it. We just don't know that yet. I think that skin cell transfer DNA and then analyzed through genealogy it's a tall order. And that's where I kind of hit a brick wall, where I need a little bit more explanation. So I'm looking at it through the lens of a potential juror, and I think that there's some major reasonable doubt, and we don't know everything yet, but we're going to see. The judge did issue, just giving you guys an update on this, there's a temporary stay, and this is another big piece of it, in that the prosecution may have potentially bungled this case because his attorneys requested a stay in the proceedings in June, saying that they intended to argue that there was issues with the grand jury in this decision. Judge said that because the defense had only received the clerk's record and recording of the grand jury materials on July 6th, and the transcript wouldn't be available until July 21st, that they didn't want to fully basically decide on a permanent stay, so they issued 37-day stay, which basically just puts off the date of the trial, and in regards to a speedy trial. Basically, they have these laws in Idaho that you have to be, tried within 6 months of your arraignment if you opt in for a speedy trial, which a defendant has the right to do. So it's all just kind of like technical mumbo jumbo, but the judge noted that the delay in preparing the transcripts and gathering the grand jury materials merited a stay to allow for the defense adequate time to review them. So, and then the judge also ordered that the Latah County to pay for the costs of preparing the grand jury transcription because he is indigent. So, great. Your taxpayer dollars at work, any of you Idahoans that may be watching. But we'll see, guys. And if they messed up this grand jury proceedings, there was potential, like jury tampering, or not jury tampering, but maybe like jury pool, like the jury pool might have been tainted, like improper connections, or I forget exactly what their argument was. Let's see if we can actually, but it was something having to do with questions in regards to the grand jury that his defense attorneys were bringing up, and doesn't look good on that front either. So this is just one example of how the media put out a piece of information in the early days. I mean, this wasn't that early, but I'm sorry, not this one. Wait, let me see. Yeah, so this one here, it was from 4/11 of 2023. Smoking gun evidence found in BRYAN KOHBERGER's home. Report from who? Yeah, this is how the media works. This is, if you guys aren't hip to this, yeah, fake news is a real thing, and you have to take everything these people say with a grain of salt. Everyone is racing to get a headline and to get clicks and views. They're not racing for the truth. So it was reported that they had seized ID cards that were inside a glove in a box during the search of KOHBERGER's parents' home, and that one ID was found in reportedly connected to someone in the home where the slayings occurred. So this was put out. It was everywhere. You can find a ton of articles relating to this report. And then after April, nothing. There has been nothing saying whether or not this report was, accurate. Like, was it really a smoking gun? Like, why aren't they still running with this? Or whether or not it had been refuted. But there has been motions, and the defense has been coming forward to say that there is no connection between him and Idaho students who were killed. So in a new court filing by an attorney for BRYAN KOHBERGER, the suspect in the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students last fall, attorney Jay Longsdon argues there is no connection between him and the victims. And then this is the big thing. There is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in KOHBERGER's apartment, office, home, or vehicle. And if that is true, and I said this from the beginning, I remember specifically talking to my dad about this, saying, whenever I was kind of relaying my doubts to him, and him and I have been discussing this case since the beginning, I said that if this is the person, because I had doubts, there will be evidence in that vehicle. And you can be the most careful person, because people were saying, oh, he was this crime, he was studying crime, he was a criminology major, and he knew how to basically strip his body of the clothing before he got in the car, and maybe he carried bags with him, and then so what, he got buck naked in the house where he had just killed 4 people and been seen by another roommate at the very end thinking that, you know, oh shit, she just saw me. She might be in there calling the police. But wait, let me strip down my entire body and put all of my clothes very carefully into bags so that I don't get blood on the outside. It's just, to me, that's crazy. I mean, granted, is it possible? I guess, yes. But my thing is that, like, you might not find anything in his home. You may not ever find anything in his office relating to the victims in this case. But I said, if he did it, there is going to be something in that car that will tie the victims to him without a doubt. It's impossible. You cannot convince me otherwise. And if they have nothing in his house, his car, and I don't care how good he scrubbed it, people, there's microscopic evidence that can be found. So this is huge for me personally. I don't know, you guys let me know, how do y'all feel about that piece of it? So the last thing that I will get into is, again, just basically reiterating this point. Kohberger's lawyers claim DNA from multiple other men found at Idaho murder scene. This is basically what Mark Garagos was speaking on. This is another huge point against the prosecution at this, you know, very early state, that is going to have to be overcame. And will it turn out that they did their due diligence and, you know, are able to prove that in a court of law? It's still to be determined, but this is making me very uneasy. That, and then the lack of DNA evidence in, you know, any property or any piece of where Bryan Kohberger had either resided or within his car, tying back to the victims. That is, again, that was my big thing from the beginning. I was like, you know, I almost had it in my mind, like, to the point where I was, you know, I was going to, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't be a good juror for this case, because I was very much to the point of, there's got to be something in the car. And can you link him to any of these victims? Like, why would he do this randomly in such a horrific manner? These are all questions, and I would love to know what you guys think about this. So please let me know in the comments, guys, what are your thoughts on everything we discussed on the case in general. And do you think that this person is guilty so far, based on what you've seen, based on what I have brought up in this podcast? And subscribe to the channel, guys. If you enjoyed the content for today, please go ahead and follow me on Twitter as well. I would very much appreciate that. And yeah, guys, thank you for being here with me today. And I just want to say, for the last thing, of course, honoring the victims in this case. We must always remember Kaylee Goncalves, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. They are, the ultimate victims. Obviously, they are completely innocent players in this entire scenario, in this entire event. They did not deserve what happened to them. They were completely slaughtered in such a heinous and unjust way, and the main thing that we all want is justice for these 4 individuals, and that is, I think, what we must strive for. So whether or not he is guilty, I guess we'll play out in a court of law, but I just hope if he is guilty, they better be able to prove it, because for someone to get away with this would be the ultimate travesty. So let me know, guys. Until next time, y'all take it easy, and I will see y'all later. Bye.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.